such beautiful music that I think, I was sitting in a classical orchestra myself 120 years ago.
André Rieu had it all, a fortune rivaling that of rock legends, castles worthy of royalty, and sold-out arenas spanning the globe. But behind the glittering costumes, the dazzling lights, and the thunderous ovations was a story few ever saw coming. Through classical music alone, Rieu built a financial empire exceeding $40 million, an extraordinary achievement, virtually unprecedented even among modern pop superstars. But with that success came a heavy cost, one that would ultimately bring both triumph and heartbreak to those closest to him.
Classical music or pop music, it's all music, but it must touch my heart. And I know when it touches my heart, it will touch your heart.
Yeah.
Rieu's journey began far from the spotlight. Born into a musical household, his father, a respected conductor of the Maastricht Symphony Orchestra, music was an inseparable part of his world. Yet, André envisioned something far beyond the traditional concert hall. He dreamed of performances that were bold, joyful, and unforgettable, of audiences clapping, dancing, and rising to their feet. In 1987, he took a gamble that would alter the course of his life. He founded the Johann Strauss Orchestra, not as a small classical group, but as an ambitious entertainment force. What began with just 12 musicians would soon swell into a 60-piece orchestra, drawing talent from across the globe. Rieu didn't just perform classical waltzes, he created full-scale spectacles, merging traditional compositions with pop culture flair. Even unconventional selections like the Macarena found their place in his set lists. It was a formula that resonated. Tickets sold at an unprecedented rate. His concerts shifted from modest venues to massive arenas and open-air stadiums. By the early 2000s, Rieu's name topped charts once dominated by the world's most iconic acts. He regularly outgrossed tours by Bruce Springsteen, Coldplay, and even AC/DC. His DVDs became international bestsellers. Fans traveled thousands of miles to see him live, cheering not with reserved applause, but with the energy of a rock concert. The result was staggering. André Rieu became the wealthiest violinist on earth. But instead of quietly banking his earnings, Rieu chose to reinvest them, always pushing the boundaries of spectacle. In 2008, he undertook one of his most ambitious projects, a $30 million replica of Vienna's Schönbrunn Palace, constructed as a touring stage. It was opulent, extravagant, and nearly catastrophic. The enormous production costs brought Rieu to the brink of financial collapse. Decades of success were suddenly at risk, yet he refused to fold. He returned to the road, performance by performance, paying off the debt and rebuilding his empire, one note at a time. Embracing innovation, Rieu expanded into cinemas, broadcasting his performances in movie theaters around the world. This move not only expanded his audience, it generated millions in new revenue and cemented his image as a global entertainment icon. By 2023, his fortune had more than rebounded. It had soared, surpassing the $40 million mark. But behind André's empire stood a family. His wife, Marjorie, played a critical role, not only as his partner in life, but as a collaborator in business. She oversaw stage designs, selected venues, and helped shape the identity of the shows that millions came to love. Their son, Pierre, joined the enterprise as vice president of André Rieu Productions, helping carry the family legacy forward. Despite his global fame, Rieu never turned his back on his roots. He chose to remain in his hometown of Maastricht, purchasing and restoring a castle that dated back to 1452. Local legend claimed that D'Artagnan of the Three Musketeers once dined there. For Rieu, it was a childhood dream realized. The estate was transformed into a fairy tale home, complete with historic art, grand chandeliers, and lush gardens. a setting as magical as the concerts he conducted. Still, no matter how high the heights of success, Rieu remained tirelessly committed to his craft. He toured relentlessly, performing on every continent, bringing his signature blend of elegance and entertainment to audiences from Tokyo to Toronto. With each passing year, the empire grew larger, the applause louder. Yet even in the quiet moments, Rieu revealed a simpler side. In 2020, as the COVID-19 pandemic brought live performance to a halt, Rieu, sidelined for the first time in decades, returned to an old pastime: baking. He spent his days in the kitchen delivering homemade cakes to his neighbors. It was far from the grand stages and opulent castles, but it was deeply human. For all the glamour and glory, Rieu's story was ultimately one of vision, discipline, and tireless effort. Yet one truth remained clear: the entire empire revolved around him, and that in itself was its greatest strength and its most profound vulnerability. In 2010, André Rieu faced a critical turning point. A severe ear infection forced him off the stage, and for the first time, those closest to him were confronted with a sobering reality. The entire Rieu empire, worth tens of millions, rested on a single individual. One illness, one canceled tour, and millions in revenue could vanish overnight. The pressure was immense. But true to form, André recovered. He returned to the stage with his signature grace and determination, refusing to let anything silence the music. To the public, he remained the charismatic showman, always smiling, always vibrant. But behind the scenes, André Rieu was carrying the full weight of an empire. He was more than a musician. He was the architect of a global brand, balancing artistry, business, and legacy, all while knowing the slightest misstep could bring it all crashing down. Managing such a vast operation required more than talent. It required constant vigilance. Each concert production was a multi-million-dollar gamble. Elaborate stage designs, premium venues, international logistics, and a roster of over 60 musicians all demanded enormous investment. Success brought rewards, but the risks were always lurking. And there was more to the story, an element of André's wealth that remained largely hidden from the public eye. Beyond music, he had quietly assembled a far-reaching real estate portfolio. While most fans were familiar with his majestic Maastricht castle, few were aware of the full scope of his holdings across Europe. The castle itself, a Gothic structure built in 1452, carried with it a rich and romantic legacy. It had once belonged to Charles de Batz Castelmore d'Artagnan, the real-life inspiration for the legendary musketeer. Rieu first set foot inside the property at the age of 6, attending piano lessons within its crumbling walls. Back then, he found it cold and uninviting. But decades later, the same castle became the crown jewel of his estate. Rieu spared no expense restoring it, transforming the medieval relic into a breathtaking residence filled with rare art, sparkling chandeliers, and lush, manicured gardens. It was a home fit for a king and a reflection of the dream he had built, note by note. Among his most treasured possessions was a 1692 Stradivarius violin, acquired in 2018 for a staggering £7 million. It joined his growing collection of rare instruments, including a challenging 1667 Stradivarius he had once struggled to tame. Yet through determination and craft, he used that very violin to record some of his most celebrated works. These were not mere instruments. They were symbols of mastery. Rieu's dedication to luxury and detail extended well beyond the music. His concerts were curated down to the last thread. The gowns worn by his female orchestra members were not off the rack. They were custom creations, designed by Rieu himself and inspired by historical figures like Empress Elizabeth of Austria. Some dresses cost up to £3,000 apiece, another testament to the lavish spectacle his audiences had come to expect. It was this same vision, grand and unapologetically theatrical, that nearly cost him everything in 2008. That year, Rieu launched one of the most ambitious classical stage productions in modern history, a full-scale replica of Vienna's Schönbrunn Palace. The stage included working fountains, real ice rinks, golden carriages, and ballroom dancers in full regalia. 3 versions of the set were built and shipped around the globe. The price tag? An astonishing £34 million. The financial strain was immediate and intense. At one point, Rieu found himself in serious talks with his bank, forced to consider the liquidation of assets. But through sheer perseverance, he survived the crisis, emerging with renewed focus and an even deeper resolve. At home, the world appeared calm. André lived with his wife, Marjorie, his partner in life and in business since 1975. Together, they raised 2 sons, Marc and Pierre, inside the castle that now served as both a family sanctuary and global command center. But this was no ordinary household. Marjorie played a key creative role behind the scenes, writing scripts and helping craft the emotional journey of each performance. Pierre, their younger son, stepped into the role of vice president at André Rieu Productions, helping manage the company's ever-expanding footprint. Even casual dinners often evolved into strategic planning sessions, where business and artistry intertwined. Beneath the opulence and pageantry, however, André carried the quiet weight of a difficult past. He had grown up in a crowded, modest home in Maastricht, one of 6 children. His father, a stern and exacting conductor, offered little encouragement. His mother was even stricter. As a child, André sensed a certain resentment toward his early talent. By age 5, after only a few short weeks with a violin, he was already playing with remarkable beauty. But praise was scarce. The journey from prodigy to global icon would be one forged in solitude, discipline, and an unwavering belief in his own vision. André Rieu had built more than a career. He had built a world of music, magic, and magnificence. But behind the grandeur was a man shaped by struggle, driven by dreams, and burdened by the cost of carrying it all. Music became André Rieu's escape from a joyless home life. But it also left behind deep emotional scars. Those early wounds, carved in silence, would go on to shape his relentless pursuit of approval and perfection, and perhaps explain the grandeur, ambition, and extravagance that came to define his remarkable career. His journey began humbly. In 1978, Rieu formed his first ensemble, a modest group of 12 musicians performing at weddings and local restaurants. The performances were often ignored, the pay minimal. At one point, he joked that he might open a pizza restaurant instead, violin in hand. But then came 1987. Everything changed. Inspired by Johann Strauss, the original Waltz King, and a man who had once led 5 orchestras simultaneously, André reimagined his ensemble as the Johann Strauss Orchestra. He settled for one orchestra. But what he built would become the largest privately owned classical ensemble in the world. With that transformation, a new chapter began. The orchestra quickly outgrew its humble beginnings, performing in sold-out arenas across Europe, America, and Asia. But one of Rieu's most unlikely breakthroughs came in 1995 at a Champions League soccer match between Ajax and Bayern Munich. During halftime, with millions of viewers watching, André purchased a single minute of live national TV coverage. Ajax scored just before the break, ensuring fans would stay glued to their screens. In that single golden minute, André performed Shostakovich's Second Waltz live on air. It was a masterstroke. The following week, he sold over 200,000 CDs. In one extraordinary moment, a classical musician had captivated a sports audience and changed the course of his career forever. With success came even greater ambition. Andre began investing millions into transforming his concerts into full-scale theatrical spectacles. From artificial snowfalls and cascading balloons to opulent ball gowns and floating stages, each show became a celebration of joy and fantasy. In one now famous detail, Andre insisted on serving real champagne to his audience, despite being a lifelong non-drinker, purely in the name of authenticity. The audience were enchanted. Critics remained skeptical, but Andre was undeterred. He valued emotional sincerity over elitism and spared no expense to deliver it. For all the pageantry, Andre Rieu remained deeply grounded. He collected Tintin comics, taught himself Spanish during the pandemic by reading detective novels, and continued to treasure a toy truck from his childhood. It wasn't just a keepsake, it was a reminder of the days he and his brother Robert built cars from scrap wood and discarded wheels. But Rieu wasn't content to look backward. His gaze was always fixed on the horizon. The orchestra, now a 60-member musical powerhouse supported by a vast team of technicians, chefs, and creatives, was only the beginning. He had a far more audacious dream. Having already outsold global superstars like Beyoncé and Metallica, Andre set his sights on something no musician had ever attempted: performing a concert on the moon. Yes, the moon. Outlandish? Perhaps. But Rieu was serious. He entered into discussions with billionaire Richard Branson, exploring the possibility of building a lunar hotel. Branson, known for embracing the impossible, was enthusiastic. And Andre? He fully intended to bring his entire orchestra, along with instruments and crew, into space for the world's first lunar concert. Ambitious? Certainly. But this was a man who had already defied industry norms without institutional backing, wealthy donors, or academic patronage. Unlike most classical ensembles, the Johann Strauss Orchestra was built from the ground up. In the late 1980s, Andre had little more than a vision and a team of musicians who believed in him. Every euro earned from ticket sales and album revenue was reinvested directly into the production. Today, the orchestra operates at a staggering cost of at least $1 million per month, excluding global touring expenses. Each concert must succeed. Every album must sell. There is no safety net. To support this monumental enterprise, Rieu maintains a full-time staff of approximately 110 people, from musicians and stage crews to lighting designers and chefs. An additional 100 freelancers manage logistics, travel, and international marketing. It is a finely tuned operation, powered by precision and passion. The concert experience is both art and military operation. In cities from Mexico City to Sydney, 9 massive trucks transport the orchestra's equipment: lights, instruments, costumes, and elaborate props. Crews begin setup at 7 a.m. and often work until well past midnight, tearing everything down after the final ovation. Andre runs a tight ship. There are no diva demands or rock star indulgences. On tour, they travel with their own chefs to ensure balanced meals. Andre himself takes a nap before every performance, a ritual that keeps him sharp and composed. He knows one tired performance, one mistake, could cost everything. After each show, Andre joins his musicians, not for wild after-parties, but for intimate evenings of wine and conversation. For him, this isn't just a profession, it's a calling. And it shows. Even in the digital age, where streaming dominates and physical media has faded, Andre's album sales remain extraordinary. His 2-decade partnership with Universal Music has yielded over 40 million records sold, numbers typically reserved for global pop icons. Surprisingly, DVDs, long considered obsolete, are still in high demand among his fans. His meticulously crafted recordings of the annual Maastricht summer concerts remain bestsellers, treasured for their emotion, beauty, and permanence. He understood his audience. He gave them more than music. He gave them moments. Each album release was thoughtfully themed. One of the most popular movie themes featured cinematic classics like My Heart Will Go On, reimagined with André's signature flair. While he rarely composed original works, André had a rare talent for reinterpreting the familiar, bringing timeless pieces to life in new and unexpected ways. It was a formula that never failed, but the weight of success was heavy. With no sponsors or institutions to absorb risk, André bore it all himself. Every decision mattered. Every risk had consequences. During the COVID-19 pandemic, as stages went dark around the world, André stayed active. He baked cakes for neighbors, stayed connected to his team, and began planning his next move. One project stood out, a global cinema celebration marking his 75th birthday. Titled The Dream Continues, the film featured never-before-seen footage from decades of concerts, offering fans around the world a chance to relive the magic and reflect on a monumental career. Throughout it all, Rieu never forgot the roots of his inspiration. A key influence was his Jewish father-in-law, Edgar Kerman, whose collection of over 300 vinyl records opened André's ears to musical worlds he had never known. These records shaped not only his style, but his mission, to make classical music accessible to the masses. Pieces like Hava Nagila, a traditional Jewish klezmer tune, became crowd favorites. His rendition alone earned over 14 million views on YouTube. When he performed in Israel, audiences rose to their feet in standing ovation for his emotional renditions of beloved local songs like Jerusalem of Gold. André Rieu remained grounded, even as his legacy soared. On his 75th birthday, he celebrated in true Rieu fashion, with a floating concert through the canals of Maastricht. His entire orchestra joined him aboard, and fans around the world watched through cinema broadcasts, celebrating not just a man, but a movement. André Rieu had done the impossible. He made waltzes rival rock stars, sold millions of albums without a patron, and turned classical music into global entertainment. His story is one of vision, risk, and unwavering belief, a symphony of resilience that continues to echo in concert halls, living rooms, and hearts around the world.